When people ask an astrologer when something will happen, they usually expect a date. Vedic astrology answers with a season instead. That's the work of Dasha, the timeline of planetary periods running quietly underneath every chart. Learn the shape of your own, and a birth chart stops being a still photograph and starts behaving more like a calendar. Let's walk through how that timeline is built, the layers inside it, how it's read honestly, and the questions people usually bring. The Dasha system most Vedic astrologers work with has a name that tells you its size. Vimshottari, meaning of 120, that's literal. The full cycle runs 120 years, longer than most lives, and for the rare life that outlasts it, it simply begins again. Those years are shared among 9 planetary lords in a fixed order, each holding a fixed length. Ketu takes 7 years, Venus 20, the Sun 6, the Moon 10, Mars 7, Rahu 18, Jupiter 16, Saturn 19, and Mercury 17. Add those up and you land on 120 exactly. Nothing left over, nothing missing. Think of it as one complete wheel, and every life enters it at a different point on the rim. Where you enter isn't random either. It's set by your birth nakshatra, the lunar mansion the moon was sitting in when you were born. Each nakshatra belongs to one of the 9 lords. So your very first period and how much of it was already spent before you arrived comes straight from where the moon sat inside that mansion. Imagine Daniel, curious about why a friend's timeline looked nothing like his own. He looked up his birth nakshatra, found its lord, and saw he'd simply stepped onto the wheel at a different place. That settled something for him. Try locating your own entry point and read your years as a position on a wheel rather than a verdict. That block of years assigned to each planet is called its Mahadasha, the major period. It's what people mean when they say they're in a Saturn Dasha or a Jupiter Dasha, a broad season rather than a single moment. But no season is one flat stretch of weather. Inside every Mahadasha sits a finer layer called the antardasha, the sub-period. It divides that same span among all 9 planets again, in the same fixed order, each getting a slice proportion to its own length. So a 19-year Saturn Mahadasha still holds a Venus antardasha inside it, a Sun antardasha, and so on, each carrying its own flavor within the larger Saturn season. Go finer still, and every antardasha divides once more into a pratyantardasha. Most everyday readings stay at the first 2 levels. The finest one is saved for pinpointing a narrow window, like a wedding date or a launch. Imagine Marcus, told he was in a long Saturn season and bracing for it as one unbroken mood. When he saw the sub-periods inside it, the picture softened. It wasn't one weather system, it was many. If you know your current major period, look next at which sub-period sits inside it and let the finer layer add texture to the broad one. Once you know which planet is running the show, the next question is what that planet actually means for you. Practitioners read a period through the planet holding it, what it naturally signifies, which house it owns in your chart, and which house it's sitting in. A Jupiter period tends to push its themes of growth, learning, and fortune forward. A Mars period tends to ask for courage and decisive action. Then you layer on your own placement. If Jupiter rules your career house and sits in your house of partnership, the reading stops being generic and becomes yours. There's a fear worth naming here. People hear a planet's name and expect a sentence to be handed down. That isn't how it's read. A period names terrain, the kind of ground a stretch of years is likely to give you, not a fixed outcome. A demanding season like Saturn's rewards patience and steady structure. An easier season like Venus's rewards using the ease well rather than letting it drift. Say Noah learns he's in a Mars period and braces for trouble. When he looks closer, he sees it's asking for decisiveness, so he finally makes a choice he'd been circling for months. The ground had a texture, and he worked with it. Take the planet running your current period and ask what quality it favors, then name one thing you're already doing that fits it. The chart describes the weather. What you build inside it stays yours. Two questions come up again and again. First, what's the difference between a Mahadasha and an antardasha? As we covered, the major period is the broad season and the sub-period is the layer inside it. The practical detail worth adding. The sub-periods run through all 9 planets in that same fixed order. So once you know the order, you can see what's coming next. Second, how is your very first period decided? In practice, you look up your birth nakshatra, find its ruling planet, and note how far the moon had traveled through it. That distance tells you how much of that period was already behind you. So we've traced how a life gets divided into planetary seasons, from the full 120-year wheel down to the sub-periods nested inside each major span, and how a thoughtful reader treats all of it as ground rather than destiny. If you take one thing from this, let it be this. Find your entry point. Notice which planet is holding the reins right now, and ask what that season is asking of you. And if a demanding stretch has taught you patience, spend some of it on someone else who's struggling, quietly, expecting nothing back. Let the month find its own rhythm and keep step with it.